I speak to you in the name of the one holy and living God. Please sit. Well, although this morning's gospel text from Luke is generally known as the walk to Emmaus, I would like to propose that perhaps it is more accurately described as the walk away from Jerusalem. You see, the entire gospel, according to Luke, is a broad, sweeping movement toward Jerusalem, where the culminating clash between worldly and spiritual powers occurs on the cross. So here is what is happening. It is still the first morning, the first day of the week. Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and the other women have just told the apostles and the rest of the crowd that when they went to Jesus' tomb, they did not find his body. Instead, there were two men in dazzling clothes asking them, "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here, but has risen." And when the women tell this to the 11 apostles and the rest of the crowd, they're not believed. Which brings us to this morning's gospel text. You see, the very next chapter in Luke's gospel is where we meet Cleopas and his unnamed companion. And they're walking away from Jerusalem. And they're walking away because all is lost. Their hope that life would be changed for the good is shattered. The countercultural way of life embodied by Jesus and expressed through his life and ministry has been snuffed out. In the interest of maintaining the power and privilege of the religious and political officials and elite, Jesus' invitation to a fullness of life meant for all people is exterminated. Cleopas and his companion are grieving. I mean, after all, they followed Jesus all the way to Jerusalem, believing that he was a prophet, mighty in deed and word, before God and before all people. He was the prophet whom they hoped would redeem Israel. But the religious and political officials tortured and murdered Jesus, killed their dream. The bereft disciples have no idea where they're going. They have no new picture for their future. They're grieving. They're grieving because all seems lost. So they are walking away from Jerusalem. And as they're walking away, they're doing what any one of us would be doing. They're rehashing and retelling the story of all that has just transpired. Can you believe what has just happened? How could it be? And they're telling the story of Jesus' crucifixion. Just as we would, and just as we are, rehearsing the story of all the deaths and suffering that are surrounding us. As of Friday, there were 5,769 cases of COVID-19 in Arizona with 249 deaths. Worldwide, there were 2.74 million cases and 192,000 deaths. In the last 3 weeks, 27 million Americans have filed for unemployment. Think about that. 27 million people newly unemployed. And in a mere 6 weeks, the $2.7 trillion, that's with a T, $2.7 trillion aviation industry has been brought to its knees. Financial despair and social distancing has led to a mental health crisis. Isolation policies mean that people die alone and their loved ones cannot be with them, cannot bury them, cannot gather and celebrate their lives. And even those of us for whom COVID-19 and stay-at-home orders really don't change our lives that much, Jesus' invitation to a fullness of life for all people echoes empty. Today we join Cleopas and his companion walking away from Jerusalem. We have no idea where we're going. We have no clear picture for the future. We're not even sure how to reopen the church. And there is still good news. Jesus is walking with us. He's present in the midst of suffering, death, and uncertainty. And so the question we are faced with is this: how do we recognize the real presence of Jesus? Well, to help us along the way, we gather, even remotely like this, remotely at this table with Jesus. We remember the last Passover supper when Jesus took a loaf of bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and gave it to them and said, "Take, this is my body which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." Do this, a call to action. And he did the same thing with the cup after supper, saying, "This cup that is poured out for you is the new covenant in my blood." Well, what does that mean? The new covenant is a promise. What is the new promise? The new promise is a promise for fullness of life for all people. It's the promise for which Jesus is willing to spill his own blood. Then at the table, like Cleopas and his companion, the eyes of our hearts are open. And we recognize the presence of Jesus with us. You see, like the disciples, we recognize the presence of Jesus by what he does. He breaks bread. He shares it. Everyone eats. Everyone is cared for. We recognize the real presence of Jesus in stories like the one Deacon Linda Hudson told me this week. The dying wish of a woman in hospice was that she would hear the symphony one last time. And so staff had learned that this woman was a cellist. And so they reached out to the Tucson Orchestra, and playing remotely from their separate homes, a flautist, a violinist, and a cellist fulfilled the dying woman's wish. Jesus is made known through the actions of every healthcare and hospice worker, first responder, caregiver, cook, folks who shelve and deliver groceries, house the homeless, sterilize our grocery carts, deliver backpacks stuffed with books for our children, make calls and send notes of encouragements to others. We recognize Jesus by what he does. And just as soon as we do, just as soon as we join in that action, communicating Jesus' love, our hope is rekindled. And even the smallest glimmer of hope allows us to join Cleopas and his unnamed companion and turn around and head back to Jerusalem, telling the stories of how Jesus was revealed to us in the breaking of the bread. The real presence of Jesus is made known to us by so many people's abundant generosity and unspeakable acts of self-giving love. Dear people of God, here's the thing. The real presence of Jesus depends on every single one of us. It depends on every one of us fulfilling Jesus' dying promise of fullness of life for all people. Amen.